There's a lot that we love about the liveaboard lifestyle. What really appeals to me is the travel and the adventure and the challenge, because it is challenging. I also really love the minimalist nature of our lifestyle and the fact that we are self-sufficient, the fact that we are connected to the environment in a way that you just aren't when you live in a city.
I love the boat. I think it's cozy, I think it's beautiful, it's comfortable. You know, this is our home, it's got just about everything we own on board. It's just a very nice lifestyle.
We've been living on the boat for 5 years now, and 4 of those have been actually actively sailing and cruising. So for the first year we were just living in our marina, getting the boat ready to set sail, and for the 4 years after that we have actually been sailing around half of the world. We have sailed from the UK down the Atlantic coast of Europe, we crossed the Atlantic Ocean, and then we spent 2 years in the Caribbean and the Bahamas, the east coast of the USA, and then last year we crossed the Atlantic again back to Europe, and that's where we are now. So before we moved onto our boat, we were living in London in our apartment. I was working as a paramedic and Nick was working as a dentist. So with my shift work, we didn't actually get a chance to see each other very much. So when we were together, it was usually on the weekend while we were sailing. I think that we both felt that life in London was, it was very hectic, it was very fast paced, and we both, I think, got caught up in the whole consumerism of modern day life, and we crave something simpler, I think.
It was very, very scary making that transition from being in a job with the security of employment to going, actually, you know what, I'm going to do this while I'm young enough to enjoy it. And it was a very brave decision I think we made. Some may say foolish, but looking back on it now, we're coming up to 5 years. Just the best thing we ever did. My first boat was a little starter boat, 25 footer, worth very little. Learnt the ropes on that, then bought a bigger boat, a 32 footer, and then when I met Terysa, we hatched this plan to buy something we could live on, so this is 40 foot. So welcome to the inside of Ruby Rose. The galley, or kitchen as it would be known if it were on land, is essentially a miniature version of the kitchen that we had while we were living in London. There's not a lot that we don't have. So we've got a cooker, a grill and an oven, we've got fridges, we've got hot and cold running water, we've got our coffee machine, and we've got all the space that we could need for storage. The saloon, this is the area that we eat in, it's the area that we watch television, and it has 2 large sofas. The sofas are long enough for us to both relax, lay down on, and sometimes we sleep on these. When we were crossing the Atlantic, we can pull up cloths, and those cloths make cots, and those cots allow us, if it's really rough, to sleep in without getting thrown out of bed. We've got lots of storage. This is our lovely drinks cabinet. We have got a television over there with DVDs, and under these sofas, and to the side of the sofas, we've got lots of storage for books, for glasses, and all our cutlery and crockery here. You'll also notice in the middle of the saloon, we've got this large box. Now this box does actually turn into an 8-seater table, just in case we have a dinner party. It's rare, but it has happened. But in addition to that, our boat, the keel, the bottom of it lifts up so we can dry the boat out. And this box here holds the mechanism for the keel. So this is part functional, but also part of our table. As you can see, it's very, very bright and very airy. This is toughened bulletproof glass so that we can have a lot of light coming through the boat.
So our first cabin that I want to show you is our fore cabin. This is like our guest cabin, which is set up for guests at the moment, but I have to admit that often we use it for storage because we have good storage on this boat, but when you're living in a tiny space, then yeah, sometimes you need somewhere extra to put stuff. So I'll just show you down here. This is just some extra storage here, and then we've got a V-berth right here, and this is a really comfortable cabin actually. We've got a big opening hatch, which means that it's got really nice airflow, and you can't see it at the moment, but there's loads of storage underneath the bed, underneath the mattress. Behind the door there's a big cupboard, and as you can see there's shelves on either side, and we've got loads of things up on those shelves at the moment, one of which is Nick's guitar. Yes, we take Nick's guitars, 2 guitars everywhere with us, and one is it's called a hydrovane, and it helps us steer when we're crossing oceans. I won't bore you with that right now, but it's another steering mechanism for us. And our cabin is the master cabin, which is in the aft part of the boat, or the back of the boat, and I'm going to show you in there right now. I have to admit that when I first got onto this boat and I came into this cabin, this is what sold this boat for me. I just fell in love with it. So we've got a good size bed here, plenty big enough for 2 people, and we've also got loads of storage underneath the bed, and also behind the couches on either side. You'll notice that above our bed we've got some fans, so that's how we keep cool when we are in tropical areas, and we've also got some opening hatches just up here. So our bathrooms are not called bathrooms because we're on a boat, they're called heads instead. We have 2 of them, and this is the main one. This is what we use most of the time. And I'll just show you in here. It is compact, but it does have everything that we need. Obviously we've got the toilet and the sink and some storage. We don't have a separate shower. What we have to do is we take the tap or the faucet and we have to attach it up the top, and that creates like a wet room, so that's our shower. We have a pump. We can turn the pump on to pump the water out of the bottom of the floor. We've got a big locker here as well, which we keep all our wet weather gear in. We try to stay in nice warm tropical places, so we don't actually need to go into that locker very often, but that's where all of our weather gear is kept as well.
We are almost a completely green boat, so completely self-sustainable. So we have solar panels for generating electricity, we have a wind generator for generating electricity, and we have a hydro generator which we tow behind the boat, which also generates electricity. So we are completely powered. We don't have air conditioning on board, we don't have the power for that and all the space for an air conditioning unit. And living in the Caribbean, there was always enough breeze. Where we're in marinas, we obviously have electricity to generate water. We have a water maker that produces enough water for us to kind of live quite happily. We have a black water holding tank, which we then pump out, when we're 12 miles offshore. We don't have a grey water tank. Again, it's very difficult to find the space for one. So how we made the transition, we planned probably, I think, 3 years before we moved onto the boat. We bought the boat and we had a plan. It took us 3 years to get out.
And there were 2 parts to our transition. One was wrapping up our life in London, and the other part was getting the boat ready to set sail. So they were both happening kind of simultaneously. We had a 3-bedroom apartment that we basically sold everything on eBay or got rid of everything. We have a storage unit for things that are of personal value, but it was a huge undertaking getting rid of all of our stuff. The other part was that Nick had to sell his business, and that took a long time and that was very stressful. For me, it was just a fairly straightforward process of resigning from my job. So when we finally had all of that wrapped up, then we moved onto the boat. And then we had to get the boat ready for the type of sailing and cruising that we wanted to do. And that was a long process as well. That took us about a year.
Another question we get asked a lot is how do we afford this lifestyle? What do we do to kind of like keep us going and sailing around the world? Well, initially when we stopped work, we rented out our apartment. So we have an apartment in London and we rent that apartment out and we live on the rent. Over the last couple of years, we started our YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel has really taken off. So between YouTube and Patreon, we make an income from that as well. So that's it. They're the strands of our income.
To be on a boat in the middle of the ocean with absolutely nothing around you, no land for sometimes thousands of miles, is an experience unlike any other. It really is quite mind-blowing, and it can feel quite daunting, and at times it just hits you how ridiculous the situation is that you're just on a relatively small boat in the middle of literally nowhere, as isolated as you could probably get, and it's just you and the boat and the ocean and this whole world underneath you that you can't see or even imagine. It's a relatively stressful situation to be in anyway, even when things are all going well, because you know that there's potential for things to go wrong. So you're constantly doing risk assessments, you're constantly aware that there is a danger, even though you do all you can to minimize that danger. But it's at the end of the day, it's a huge achievement, I think, to cross an ocean on your own boat, and it's an achievement that we've been lucky enough to do twice so far, and it's something that you're always glad when it's over, but as soon as it's over and you've recovered, you're kind of looking forward to the next time.
Definitely. My love of the sea is formed from this, the kind of like the fact that you have to respect it, the fact that it gives so much but asks so much from you as well. A lot of people ask this, what do we do at night? Do we stop sailing at night? Yes, we generally stop sailing at night if we're not on long passages, otherwise we have to stay up and keep watch. But when we moor the boat, it depends on the region we're in. You know, in Europe, so far in the Mediterranean, it's been a lot of marinas because there aren't many places to anchor. In the Caribbean, it was anchoring almost exclusively for 2 years. We tend to avoid mooring buoys unless we're in very, very crowded anchorages. But yeah, it just depends on the area we're in.
The food situation on the boat is pretty similar to living on land really, except because we aren't always near supermarkets. In fact, often, especially in the Caribbean, we are nowhere near supermarkets, sometimes for months at a time. We have to be very careful about when we provision what we're buying and making sure that we're planning ahead. The other thing is that when we do provision, we often have to take several hours to do that. So when you're living on land, usually you just jump in the car, you drive to a supermarket, and it's all done within an hour or so. Living on a boat, our form of transportation is usually just our legs. Also, the supermarkets are generally a reasonable walk away, and then we have to carry everything ourselves back to the boat, so we can't buy as much at any one time. How we provision really depends on where we are and the way that we're sailing. When we're preparing for an ocean crossing, for example, the longest crossing we've done has been 3 weeks. So we had to have 3 weeks worth of food on board at that time. We were able to catch fish on passage, which helped a little bit, but we had to assume that we weren't going to be able to do that, and that was a bit of a challenge, especially with fresh food. So this is our cockpit area, and this is where we spend almost all of our time, especially when we're at anchor. We love just lounging around and relaxing in the cockpit, but also when we're underway, we are obviously almost always in the cockpit. So it's a very comfortable area and it's a very safe area. So I'll just show you a few of the features. We have 2 helming positions, and this is the main one that we use. We use this because it's got most of our controls here. So as you can see, I've got things like a compass, I've got controls for the keel, for the windlass, which is what helps us drop our anchor into the water, for our bow thruster, which allows us to move our bow from side to side, and our ignition for our engine. So we've got quite a lot of stuff going on right here. If I take you to the other helming position, this is where we have our VHF radio, and this is how we communicate with nearby boats when we are sailing. We've also got a chart plotter, which is obviously off right now because we are all tied up, but generally speaking this is on, especially when we're underway, and we use this to look at our charts, our electronic charts, as well as to see the boats around us, and we also have radar, so that shows up on here as well. We have quite a lot of safety equipment on the back of our boat here. We've got some man overboard equipment as well as our life raft. Over on this side we have some more fun items. We have our barbecue and our esky, as well as our outboard engine, which we attach to our dinghy, and that's how we get around when we are at anchor. We have 4 winches, one on either side here and 2 just behind me. Most of our lines come back to these 2 winches, and this is how we control both of the sails. And this is really great because we've set up our boat to control everything from the cockpit, so we don't ever need to go forward, which means that it's much safer setup. So in rough seas or rough weather, we can just stay in the safety of the cockpit. We can tie ourselves onto the railing here, or we've got these tie-off points here, and we don't ever need to leave, but we can manage the sails from here.
Every boat should have a nav station and or a chart table. Now we keep all our charts in this table here, but in addition to this we've got some modern day twists on kind of traditional navigation. We've got both our radios here, so we've got our regular radio, which is our VHF radio for talking to people within about a 40-mile range. We've also got a high frequency radio, so we can talk to people using what's called an SSB, a single sideband radio, anywhere on the planet. You can get up to and including 3,000-4,000 miles range. So we've also got our satellite phone and other ways of communicating if we're trying to get weather at sea. Moving back a little bit, there's a control panel here, and that is to do with our electricity, controlling how much water we've got, controlling how much electricity we're using, whether that's solar panels or whether it's our wind generator, because as you can imagine, if you are living off grid as we do, you have to be really careful about your usage of water, how much tank space we've got, how much electricity we're using, whether the sun's out, whether it's windy. And so we can monitor quite carefully and quite accurately how much water and electricity we are using. So the challenges of a sailing lifestyle, well, really, I think you do have to appreciate from day one, from the get-go, whether you've got a new boat or an old boat, you will be repairing things every day. Everything needs maintenance, and that maintenance is a lot more frequent and extensive than a house. That's the first thing. The challenges really are not getting burnout. I think that was the biggest challenge for us. You do need at some point to put some roots down, spend a month in a place, and so those I think are the biggest challenges. I haven't found anything else to be a challenge. Wi-Fi, we haven't struggled with Wi-Fi at all. Local SIM cards and a Wi-Fi booster have dealt with all that, and yeah, meeting friends and then having to leave friends is also difficult, but that's just the sailing life and you have to accept that.
Another challenge is that we are so connected to the environment, which in a way is part of what we love about this lifestyle so much. But the flip side of that is that we are completely at the mercy of the weather. And so our plans really are dictated by the weather, not just seasonal weather, i.e. prevailing winds for that time of year, but more localized weather as well. And we can have the intention of being at a certain place on a certain date, but the reality is that we never quite know what we're going to be doing on any given day because we don't know what the weather's going to be like. And more than once we have been woken up in the middle of the night because the weather has changed, and it can be really challenging. You might be in an anchorage that was perfectly safe in the evening, and then by 2 o'clock in the morning it's become unsafe and you have to move in the middle of the night. So that's another challenge as well, is you have to be constantly aware of the weather conditions of your environment and change your plans to suit those. The other thing about living on a boat is that I think you really do have to push yourself all the time. The entire experience is a challenge for reasons that we've already talked about, but you also are constantly learning new skills. Nick has had to learn how to be an electrician, a plumber, a carpenter. I have had to become a logistician, a planner, an organizer, a navigator, in addition to being sailors. And really you have to be a little bit of everything when you're living on a boat, because you don't have any other experts to turn to. You are the only people who can solve a particular problem on a certain day, and it's a constant learning curve. We are learning every day, every year. We're getting better and better, and we're getting more and more experience, but there is always going to be so much more to learn.
I look back on what we've done over the last 4 years, and it has been the best 4 years of my life, without fail. Being able to take all that you hold as kind of like possession on your entire house with you and continually change the view, experiencing different cultures and living those cultures, just experiencing life in a way that we would never have experienced it if we done it any other way. There have been downs, of course there have been downs, but overall, looking back, it's just been bloody awesome, like amazing. We have achieved so much and we are so much happier now.
Be sure to subscribe to Exploring Alternatives and check out our playlists for more stories like this. You can also follow Nick and Terysa on their YouTube channel at Sailing Yacht Ruby Rose. Thanks for watching.